Okay, would you like to introduce yourselves?
I'm Clarke and I'm the current chair of AbSec, which is the Aboriginal Child and Community Care State Secretariat.
And I'm Bennett. I'm the Senior Operations Manager for AbSec.
Excellent. We'll start. What have been the challenges around responding to critical incidents and reportable conduct matters for Aboriginal organisations?
I think some of the big challenges has been typically looking at the transition process. So with the transition with children coming across from FACS into Aboriginal organisations, with that rapid growth that's needed, a lot of our agencies have had to enter out-of-home care with no experience from out-of-home care, or been quite small. So the challenges of them have been not only to seek accreditation to meet the standard, all those processes of becoming established, then also meeting the really high level responses and sophisticated processes around responding to children or allegations of harm against carers and against staff, whilst observing and meeting all the standards with the Ombudsman and complying with all the reporting obligations. So I think there's agencies around like Dana, who's running Barrendola, who've been around for a long time and quite established and have quite robust processes and really good processes in place. So the challenge hasn't been as hard on them, but certainly with the number of new agencies and agencies going through the accreditation process, that's been the real challenge for us with that rapid growth. That's how I've seen it. Not only to be accredited, to take on more and more kids, to train staff, but in the meantime meet the reporting obligations, to meet the report to the Ombudsman, and making sure the whole time the kids are being safe. So has been a real challenge. It's required a lot of training, a lot of support, a lot of professional development. They've been the big challenges. What do you?
I also think that given the high representation of Aboriginal children in the child protection system, and given our relatively small population base, we're much more prone to being scrutinised and we're much more prone to being public. So given that we've got 30%, I guess more than 30% Aboriginal children who are in care in New South Wales, that means that the onus, I guess, on us in response pro rata is really high in the fact that we have to respond much more often probably than other agencies do, given non-Aboriginal agencies, and also the fact that we are Aboriginal, so therefore quite often reportable allegations, there's a lot of allegations that come in that we have to work through that are very time consuming, that in not all instances are substantiated. So I'm not minimalising child protection at all, because I would never do that, but I think sometimes purely because we're Aboriginal, we're much more scrutinised and much more under the gun. And having said that, people, I guess, have been so caught up, as Greg said, in developing their agencies and getting themselves up and running, that reportable conduct has become something that became a monster for them. And without, I guess, the support, which we'll talk a bit more about, without the support of AbSec, agencies would have floundered really badly.
And to put it in perspective, the reportable conduct and managing critical instances, even the established non-Aboriginal agencies that have been, even I can think of a couple of the biggest, they've really struggled at times and found it quite difficult in times around their processes and all that sort of stuff. So it's not just the Aboriginal orgs that have struggled with it, certainly the larger non-Aboriginal ones have struggled with it as well. But I think with a lot of our newer agencies going through accreditation, all that sort of process, is they don't have that corporate knowledge that's been built up over 5 or 10 years, and that really, for me, that's where a lot of the higher level sort of processes and that have really developed over time. So it's I think there's been a lot of pressure for us to get those high level processes in very, very quickly, where usually you'd see those things over a longer period of time develop, and those learnings and corporate knowledge.
And another challenge was the first, I guess, when the Royal Commission started, the first, I guess, agency that was up before the Royal Commission was an Aboriginal agency, and it was an Aboriginal CEO that was, I guess, highlighted for us at AbSec the need for us to have a really good response prior to that happening, and also to ensure that we promoted child safety as something that was a priority for us. It also highlighted to us the means to which people will go to be able to have access to children. for abuse. So, I think this was a person that was very well known and very well known within the national sector, not only within the state sector. So we absolutely had to ensure through AbSec that our agencies were skilled. They had high levels of, training in making sure that this never happened again. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Excellent. You guys are naturals at this.
I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to ask the second question.
Okay.
Looking forward, what do you think the challenges will be in the future for Aboriginal agencies around responding to critical incidents and reportable conduct matters?
Yeah, so moving forward, I think with the growth and all that in mind, there's going to be challenges. And I think Dana touched on a really relevant point about the recent Royal Commission that really showed that what lengths some of these child people, the predators, are the ones that will go to get access to kids, and the level of dishonesty and the web of lies and that they build up around themselves to get access to kids. So that's one of the challenges, making sure that the robust systems are in place and policies, and that level of vigilance is there, that these things can't happen anymore. So some of the challenges for us, and when we work with the agencies, in my view, is that we're not here with the agencies just to tick the box. We're here to work with the agencies and to be at the level that is a light that shows. And not only are we doing it we're not here to meet minimum standards. We're here to have the best outcomes. We're there to make sure that when the kids come, and Aboriginal kids are removed from their family, they're placed with one of our organisations, they're safe 100%, not 90% of the time, not 80%, they're there 100% of the time. And if there's allegations that question that, they're dealt with very quickly, they're dealt with very robustly and transparently. And if something that has brought up some sort of issues or brought up some inadequacies, well then processes are put in straight away to rectify that. So that's moving forward. That's where we want to see the agencies. I think some of the agencies are there, some aren't. So it's about really looking at where the agencies are and providing the services and support. So certainly, I think there's going to be a need for increased support around the reportable conduct, around training and lots of stuff for staff, because your orgs are getting bigger, taking more and more kids on. More kids, the more allegations that you have. Do you know what I mean? So it's about doing that and doing it better. So what some of the challenges are not only just doing the reportable conduct, but actually doing it really well and to being really transparent, really robust. And being really fearless and going through and going, what is there anything in these allegations or this critical? Being fearless and going, what's at the cause of this? Is it a person? Is it that carers have actually done the wrong thing, or is it actually the organisation that's put this person in the position to set them up to fail, or we didn't really assess the needs of the kids or the carers that well, or their needs just didn't match. We didn't really pick that up early. You know what I mean? So there's lots of things we can look at to ensure the best outcome for the kids, and that's what we're about. We're here to make sure kids are safe and they're the best outcomes. We don't want placement breakdowns. We don't want anything like that. We want kids staying in their placements, learning and being healthy and developing as healthy Aboriginal kids who have connections to their culture and their community and are being safe. And that's what the goal is. And AbSec will work. The goal is to work that way and work with all agencies, that they're all operating at that standard. So they're some of the big challenges.
I think one of the things Greg mentioned too previously was around an agency like mine and some of the older Aboriginal, like Nanya Judgem, those places have been, and BACs have been established for a long time. So they have, we have a level of, we kind of were eased into it in some ways because we went through a process where we originally didn't have case management, didn't have the responsibility of the reportable conduct allegations. And through a process have learnt. So you know what the steps are, we know where to go with those kind of things. The newer agencies kind of need to be supported because the transition or new entries into care or however, I guess, even through the Safe Home for Life's transition, we were talking about guardianship orders and things like that. They will be huge challenges for our agencies for the newer ones, because it's all learning. And if you're always putting the child at the front of what we do, children and families should always be at the front of what we do, it becomes very tight on resources for agencies. That's the thing that I think we kind of underestimate, because there's a big process and a lot of, hours go into reportable conduct or critical incident issues. So those agencies we need to ensure that they're resourced, with, I guess, with the skills and the things that they need to do that, but also with the manpower and the money to do it. So I think that's a huge issue.
Yeah, and that's a huge challenge moving forward. So, and Dana raised a good point: is how do we get that organisation learning over 5 years into an agency into a couple of months? So we've AbSec, we've developed a support folder, resource folder form for reportable conduct, so it carries all the it gives dummy policies, procedures for it. It has dummy letters, like that cover the procedural fairness, the formal letters for carers. It has investigation templates for investigation plans, investigation reports, all the correspondence they need to complete the send to the Ombudsman to make sure they meet all the requirements. So that's been a bit of a help, and that's what AbSec will continue to do to accelerate that learning and that development in newer organisations and the organisations that have just commenced or grown or haven't maybe experienced many reportable conduct matters or critical incident matters. But certainly as they grow, they will. So that's one of the things that we've addressed. So moving forward to address some of those things. And the other thing is it's a really different skill set that agencies have to develop, and with the almost investigative interviewing of children, which is quite, whether that's done, how well that's done, certainly can dictate the outcome of, of that. And if we don't do that well, then you're not going to get the appropriate outcome in the investigation. So that's something that we've identified, and we're working with the agencies, and we'll continue to work on. And we've developed a course for all our staff and agencies to do investigative interviewing with children, how to do that, and how to do it appropriately in a way that will hold up if worst case scenario and it has to go on to some sort of legal jurisdiction, that the work that they've done can be used in that way.
I think some of the challenges of the past too have been working with the statutory bodies. I think Aboriginal agencies were very reluctant to work with people like the Ombudsman, the Office of the Children's Guardian, and Community Services. And that has been, I guess, a learning from people like Greg and AbSec and developing partnerships and being able to, I guess, get our organisations and our communities to actually understand that these people are here to help us and not to actually, past policies still have a huge impact on our agencies, and not so much our agencies, but probably more our communities. So that, I guess, not to see agencies, those kind of agencies as people that are there to, I guess, take our kids away or to kind of tell us that we do things badly, but really now to provide support and to kind of help us through that process.
Thank you. Last question.
Mm-hmm.
What are AbSec's future plans in supporting Aboriginal agencies, children, family and community, keeping kids safe and ensuring robust child protection policies and procedures?
Yeah, well,
I think you just answered.
There's lots. There's lots. I think continued on to what Dan just said, and just having those stakeholder relationships is something that is really, really important. And Dana, when she says about about the agencies, and typically, historically, there is a lack of trust between some of the Aboriginal communities and government agencies. Through lots of reasons. So I think that's one of the challenges at AbSec we've had to work with, saying we understand where that is, but just the benefits of having those relationships. And it's not the benefit for necessarily the agent, but the benefit for that filters down from the agency to the kids in care. These oversight bodies like the New South Wales Ombudsman and all that sort of stuff are actually not there to carrying, to criticise you or to say how badly things are done, but they're really there to help to support agencies develop. And the Ombudsman is a very good example. They acknowledge where agencies are when they start, whether they're quite going through just the accreditation, first being quite small to quite large, and they're very good at supporting agencies where they fall on that spectrum. So that's one, and I think developed that, and Dana recently put on with Barrendyle a matter up at Coffs Harbour where that we did it was run with the Ombudsman, but also with the police, and with a view of trying to get better relationships and establish better relationships between the Aboriginal organisations and police. So there's a greater relationship, there's greater exchange for information, which allows agencies to make real-time decisions, child protection decisions about kids in their care. So that's one of the things we're working on to going forward. And I think then the conference that Dana first put on, that Barron Dyer put on, to be the first one we've actually done that to address that. We've had some real positives come out of that. I know that there's a police for Kuri surfing comp that's come out of it, all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of relationships that have been built. There's still relationships that need to be built, but I think moving forward, that stakeholder relationship and engagement, and having, developing that trust with orgs in those oversight bodies will be a challenge, but we've seen the benefits that it provides. So certainly for me, that's something that we would be in the future trying to work with.
And I think that there's been some great relationship and partnership development in that process. I know the Ombudsman were very Juliana and Steve and Jane were very proactive in, saying we need to let's all work together with the police, because navigating that system where there are reportable allegations and really serious reportable allegations has always been difficult. The police didn't really even know who we were. So for them, all credit to, I guess, the Ombo for actually helping us through that. And, all the AbSec agencies across the state were invited, all Aboriginal agencies across the state were invited. So it was great to actually meet with your local police, to know who to talk to, and they were quite surprised that who we were. And for them to understand what the transition process meant has been very difficult. So then they will go, oh, well, now we know who you are. And I think one of the other things that's been really good from an agent's perspective with developing those relationships, both with the OCG about robust working with children checks and the probity around those kinds of things, and the Ombos has been the ability to just pick up the phone and make a phone call and have the confidence that you're going to be A, respectfully spoken to, but B, helped and supported to have an outcome that is in the best interest of the children that we're dealing with. And I think that's been fabulous. And even at a more local level, to work with the community services at a local level when you're doing joint investigations around things, and we're sharing those kind of those spaces. And I think that for me has been something that's been very positive, that we're both doing it. We're not just seeing ourselves as being left out there on a limb. There still needs to be a lot of work around that, but that's been a really big move forward. And I think the development that AbSec has done around the way to do that, with really clear, manuals and processes, is so helpful for our agencies and for our communities. And I think one of the things that we have to always remember, that as Aboriginal agencies, we're representative of our communities, we're representative of our families, and we're representative of our children. And at the front of that is our children. So our role in that is to get out in the communities and to advocate and to support and to advocate child protection, and to ensure that our communities are strong in being able to do that, and being able to know that if they say something, and the grandmothers group from Gunnedah is a really good way of seeing how strong a group of people can be in getting change. So, and they've actually done that through working with the Ombudsman, through working with community services, and working with agencies. So I think that's a really fine example of how, it's a different outcome. We're talking about children being returned to home, but it still is addressing those statutory bodies and taking them on, and then being receptive to that happening. So.
And I think that the statutory bodies have been receptive to it, and I think that the way that AbSec's work them, I think it's actually helped some of the oversight bodies to really understand the differences between or some of the extra challenges Aboriginal organisations, community-controlled organisations who provide out-of-home care services in their own community, the challenges that they face, which are quite unique, that maybe the non-Aboriginal organisations don't face. And I think it's given them a better understanding of the complexities around that, which I think will eventually allow them to work even better with our agencies moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you.